Hi, I'm Billy Aronson, and you're watching a show where nostalgia comes alive. It's Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. Roll it!
Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. Join Jake and his friends on a journey through pop culture of the past, where they interview professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and so much more. Who will they be chatting with today? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. Happy you're with us. Thank you for joining. As always, I'm your host, Jake Duffenball. And me today, of course, our co-hosts, Chris Bixby and Matt Bingle. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Doing good. How are you?
How you doing, Jake?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thank you for asking.
Wonderful. Who do we have today?
TS guest rep for today. He's a writer. A lot of you may know his work throughout that he's done throughout the children's television series throughout the years. I will touch base on that part later on. Of course, notably, a lot of you may know his work throughout. He's been since season 47. He's been one of the head writers on Sesame Street, and a lot more that we'll touch base on throughout his career later on. Please welcome Mr. Ken Scarborough. Happy to be here, Ken. Welcome. Happy to be here.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you, guys.
Yes, absolutely.
Pleasure to have you.
Happy to have you here.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was looking at your list, and it's like all the people I know and have worked with. So,
Yeah.
like I think I said to you guys, if there's anything left, I'll say it. But I think everything's possibly been covered. So
Yeah.
I'm here to sweep up.
All right.
Okay. yeah, pleasure to have you here. So to kick things off, we know who you are, but for those who haven't, could you tell our audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. I've been a head writer of kids TV for a long time now. The first show was a cartoon called Doug on Nickelodeon, and I did that for 4 years. I've had that. It's a weird little thing. I had the title head writer for the first couple seasons because I'd helped work the pilot, and they just gave it to me. But it really wasn't the last 2 seasons. I was story editor, which is the old-fashioned term for head writer. So for Doug, I was, just a writer, and then the head writer. Then Arthur called. WGBH had these books and wanted to turn it into a show, and so I did that and went over there, and it was one of those usual things. I'm sure you guys know this in all sorts of things. It's like, oh, we have all the time. Oh, no, we need 4 scripts now. And so I did that for the first, about 100 shows. I usually run out of ideas about 100 shows in. And thank God on that, just to get into the weeds a little bit before continuing the overview, we had Joe Fallon worked for me, who was the guy who you should call him up. He later went on to do Curious George for TV and a lot of other stuff. But he would, when we got the initial order for Arthur, I think it was one of those seasons that expanded. There was going to be 20, and then there was 60. In the beginning, he said, "Oh, I'm gonna write half those shows." And at the end of 60, he'd written 31. So that's a little curly Q on the Arthur story, is just how much everything people love about it really was also from Joe. And then there was the Disney Doug, and then the 90s were over. I did a couple things for Norm over on Between the Lions, and then I went on to SNL. I started out doing sketch, which is how Jim Jenkins found me to help on his pilot. And then I went back to SNL, and then back in between I was doing other kids stuff. There was still some Doug stuff. Went on to do a show called Pocoyo, which is a brilliantly animated show. It was so much fun to work with Guillermo Carci, who's the animator there. Just do gag stuff, but with a heart. And I think they were really great, funny guys. And that show is just so much fun to watch and so much fun to work on. And then Martha Speaks in there, another book thing that the WGBH had acquired.
Love that show.
Oh, I'm glad you like it. Yeah, we just did
Me
anything we
too.
wanted. They were so hands off on that. They were so And and back in the day, Doug and Arthur, they were pretty hands off. It wasn't so scared and curriculumly and give us 14 stories so we can pick one. They were just fantastic. And so that I'm glad you liked that show, because it was just really a joy, and the writers all had fun, and so that was fun. Then I was on Curious George for a while, because Joe Fallon, who I know you're going to interview now, quits everything. And he quit that show. My wife was head writing it, and she wanted to quit, and so we did it for a while, and then so I was the head writer. Curious George for a bit. Then Amazon had the books of If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, If You Give a Moose a Muffin, those books. So I started working on that, and that happened. Amazon had this crazy thing where they would do a pilot for these things and let people vote on them. And the problem is, the kids would vote on and you know how long animation takes. It was like 2 years before then they could get the series up and running. So everybody who liked it aged out. But anyway, I mean, I think it's still a good show, and there's always a new crop of children coming up like waves. So we don't worry too much about that. But that got a pick up just at the same time. In the meantime, while there was that sort of in between time, and I wrote a Christmas special for them, Sesame Called. And so I ended up doing both Sesame, this was 9 years ago, Sesame and If You Give a Mouse Cookie simultaneously. And so that's, that was a heavy lift. And yeah, here we are, just finished shooting season 55. So that's the whole of it, from the, pre-internet days of Doug to wherever we are now.
Nice.
Interesting. So what was your childhood like, and how did you grow up?
That's interesting. My childhood, Mark Brown asked me that, and I think he later said that's why he gave me Arthur. And so this better be good. I just had great parents. I had a weird childhood. I'm sure we all have weird childhoods. Everybody's childhood is so, different, and has its own kind of uniqueness. And I think particularly if you're, somebody who's interested in looking outward at stuff like that, you're not, you're a little weird in today's society. I think, it's so different to kind of have a kind of broad general approach to things. And so anyway, my parents were great. I grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona, where it was dirt roads and farms and houses built of cinder block in the middle of nothing. It's resort town now, and it's very, snobby or whatever. But back then it was ranches and just being. My parents were very active. My dad played sports every night. I played softball. And my mom was a dancer and taught the girls in the neighborhood to dance, and they both did community theater. And and I was I was doing theater. I was even doing kids theater back then. I was thinking about this, that I was I was part of an outside group in high school, but also in school when everybody else was doing King Lear when they had braces, and they were doing Willie Loman with acne. I was writing stuff that was, I felt better suited to, 13, 14, 15-year-olds to be doing fairy tales and little musical things like that. So, and then just also that was there was no internet. It was a matter of kind of going and finding things. It was a great time when I was in high school. All these great movies were coming out, and revival houses were out there. And, you went and you saw all these things. And I think making an effort helped kind of cement that in your mind. I worry now about things being, it's great. Everything's at your fingertips. And, you don't have to go to the library anymore to look up, what movies Owen Roizman was a photographer of, which is the kind of thing we would go do. It's easy, but in some ways you don't have the, the attention that you give something, and, the way of, I worry the kids sort of have the fire hose of stuff coming at them and don't have a chance to kind of choose and curate and kind of, how you find something you like and you really love it, and it's because you chose it and you made the effort. And I think that helps a lot. Somebody will give you something to read or to watch, and 9 times out of 10 you never get around to it until it comes on TV, and then it's easy to do. So it takes a little more effort, I think, to do that, and I think it's worth it though to kind of know what you like and sort of make those choices and do that kind of stuff. So I was sort of lucky in that. I was, I had to go to the library for the information, but at the same time, I got a chance to kind of know what I liked by seeking it out, making an effort.
Absolutely.
That was
So
my childhood.
nice. So now what kind of inspired you to want to get into writing? Did you always want to be a writer?
I was kind of a performer as a kid. I felt like it wasn't that great, which is probably, it's nice to know early on when you're not good at things, And I did like writing. I did like kind of being a little bit behind the scenes. I did like kind of, you got to use your imagination rather than interpreting something, which was always fun. You got to put a crazy spin on something. But on the other hand, you kind of ended up being an interpreter rather than necessarily creating things and using your imagination outside the boundaries. I mean, I feel like if you're an actor or performer, you're sort of trying to fill in those boundaries and make something real, as opposed to creating, unless you're improvising, instead of sort of creating a thing. So that was, and then I sort of got into writing in high school. Like I said, I was writing plays and playlets and things like that, and songs and stuff like that. And so then I went to USC to school there, the theater and the cinema school, and writing was an easy way in. Again, you could just go home with your paper and pencil and just do it. And I think also, like for a lot of people who are writers, that's what they want to do. They just want to sit home and don't want to get out and sell things or tell people this is great. It's like, I want to give you something and I want you to tell me what you think. I don't want to have to go out and tell you it's great. That's like so Barnum-y, so showy, and so unlikely to actually be great. So I think that was part of it. It was just wanting to do my own things and also not having to go out and dog and pony show things. So I've always been a kind of hired gun on things and waiting for the phone to ring. Although I did write, just like everybody, right out of school, wrote screenplays and had some truck with Paramount and some other places, but they never got anything on. That was a interesting thing about all that. And I'm sure it's, we didn't have the internet. We couldn't put on our own show. I think if I was your age, I would have, gravitated toward this kind of thing where you can put yourself out there. But back in the day, there were all the gatekeepers, for better or worse. It was there wasn't a huge flood tide of information where people had to find you, but there were all these no's between where you were and where you want to go. And then I went and worked on the sketch show, and there were two of us writing it, and we did 4 90-minute shows a week. So it went from like this, walking this one thing through years and years, to like you had to write as fast as you could type, and did that for about a year and a half. And so that was that wasn't children's per se, and that wasn't writing per se, but it was definitely much more writing oriented when I got to TV than business oriented or trying to please a lot of other people. So I definitely liked writing, felt I had a knack for it. So that's how did I always want to write? Yes, I guess. That was a long way of saying yes.
Nice.
Yeah. So one of your earliest jobs you had mentioned a few moments ago was on the show Doug as a writer and story editor. What was working on that show like?
It was great. I wasn't the head writer in the beginning because I hadn't head written, and Nickelodeon was like, but then they gave me the title of head writer anyway. So they didn't trust me, and so they brought in some professionals who done Camp Candy, I think. And so it was, it was nice, and it was the thing about all this stuff is kind of finding a place where your natural inclination to write something. The things I write can seem a little precious, but I definitely think it's a way of getting across your values and kind of saying something to kids, not just trying to say, parents are dumb, buy this. It's not picking nickels out of kids' pockets. I always felt like it was great to be able to do something that, dealt with kids where they were. And Jim, it's funny, he was a very religious guy, but sweet, and I'm anything but. But we sort of both had that feeling about what at core was kind of not only just communicating what being a kid was like, but also like what mattered, and both with Doug and Arthur, you had these kind of characters in the middle who were undecided, and that's kind of also a typical kind of sitcom thing. You've got Seinfeld in the middle and the crazy people around it, but I think there's this idea that helping kids find their own way through the day and through life, and making those big decisions that you're making then, and kind of figuring out who you are, and around them are all these settled characters, these characters who have already know that you solve the problem by if you're Roger, by beating some other kid up, or if you're rich, your dad will solve those problems for you. And then you have sort of a Doug in the middle who's still undecided and has his fantasies in his mind, but is still trying to get through to do the right thing, and I think for all of our differences, Jim and we definitely landed in the same place in terms of making those differences, and so I wrote about a quarter of the shows, I think, and then when I got bumped up to head writer after we'd gone through a couple of seasons of People, I brought on my writing partner from LA to do half of it, because I just still really wanted to write. I didn't want to deal with the network. I didn't want to be there making a lot of notes. Now I do it all the time. But back then I was just like, thinking up goofy stories for Doug, he throws a stone and knocks down his old girlfriend's house. That's kind of stuff you could do in animation. And I thought all that was, that kind of stuff was fun. So yeah, that was it was funny. Again, everything has to go so fast because you have all these animators standing by. I think we did all 4 seasons in like 2 years, maybe.
Oh, wow.
And so that was it's a roller coaster. You're always doing a million things, and you're trying to figure out a story, and you're mad at people, but in the end, all the arm wrestling and all the back and forth sort of comes in. And Jim at the same time I think he was doing Allegra's Window at the same time, and he was developing other shows, and he was really trying to get Jumbo to be Jumbo was the studio he ran, to be a kind of major kids thing. So he was doing spinning a lot of plates at the same time too for various shows. So, but that was what it was like. It was just sitting down and grinding out stuff. I one of the kids who was a assistant was the younger brother of the comedians I work for on this comedy show. But he was really fun, and he really knew TV, and so I got him writing on the show. He's since gone on. He's a showrunner on a lot of the Chuck Lorre kind of things, Mike and Molly, Kaminsky Method,
Oh, wow.
stuff like
Nice.
that. So Al Higgins, yeah, he was great, and so he would be up there in the office. We were in a loft down on Crosby Street, Crosby and Spring, if anybody knows where that was. And Chuck Close, the artist, was on one of the floors, and it was just this ratty old place. And we had, we would go, us writers would go up these. They had all the artists there, the color people, and editors, and back then you edited in flatbeds. And then we'd go upstairs and on the outside on the fire escape, I remember, up into this office, and Al would play the guitar and would play music and write the shows, and had a little bit of back and forth. Dietrich Smith remembers we had much more back and forth than I remember. I remember having to go home and write because everybody was just, how it is. Sometimes you go to an office or something like that and you don't get anything done. You have to go home and do it all on your own time.
Yeah, Doug's a wonderful show. One of my favorite episodes that you wrote was the episode Doug's Christmas Story. It was in the Nickelodeon series.
Yes.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, I have the script on there where I think that's the one where and the directors hated it. And he says, "The dog's funeral." Is that the one where he imagined that they were going to put the dog to sleep? No, that's the wrong one.
No, that was so basically in the episode, I think one of they're going like ice skating or something, and then there's like a crack in the ice, so Pork Chop's like trying to rescue the friend, but then they think that the dog was trying to attack the friend. So there was this whole thing about,
he
There's a
fixed
whole
my tire
trial.
on my car, and
Yeah.
But Doug did have a fantasy. I don't know if they finally cut. I think it's in there. Where the dog's on trial and he's imagining the dog is.
That might have been in that episode.
It
Yeah.
might have scarred you, and you can't, you have some PTSD in that area. But the director hated that show. But Jim stood up for me, and we went the distance, and we really tried to push him into. We had a lot of pressure from Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon was like, he should smoke. He should shoplift. He should be like a real kid. They wanted more edge. And
Yeah.
Jim, to his credit, just pushed back, and he was, he's like, "No, we're not going to do that."
And shoplift on
Yeah,
Nickelodeon. What are you talking about?
What?
No.
Well, they wanted some of that Ren and
gosh.
Stimpy, energy. Ren and Stimpy was a big
yeah.
hit, and then moved off from kids into adult world. So,
Oh, yeah.
that,
Right. Oh my gosh, Jim's best. The way he's done
Yeah.
for bringing all those shows. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, for sure. So now when the Disney version of Doug came about, you got to write Doug's first movie.
yeah.
What was working on that like?
that was an interesting thing. It was a whole different department who I think, between you and me and the rest of the world, didn't really love the show, or were, and so it was like a lot of these things get booted around from place to place, and that was sort of the end for me with Doug, because I felt like we had lost a connection to some of the values and things like that, and I think we got into the hands of, I felt like, here's the classic note. They wanted it to be Doug's Valentine. It's going to be on Valentine's Day. Doug wants Patty to be his Valentine. And the note came down from whatever suit was like, great, we love it. Have it. He's in summer camp. It's like the note came all the way down to me, and I said, Jim, on Australia, who's in summer camp in February? Did anybody notice that? And so I think that became the kind of thing where you're kind of going, I don't, this is. So there's a final season of Doug over that I didn't work on. Some other fun people did. I think Granite and Clark, if I'm not mistaken, came in and did that, and then they did some other shows. The Stanley, I think, and you probably know them better than I did, because by that time I'd moved on to SNL.
Right.
But yeah, that was an interesting time. I just feel like Disney was great, and certainly Jim and everybody, got to do more shows and did well by that deal. But I feel like it was also sort of a place that had its own style and way of doing things that they didn't really give us much on the regular show interference. But I think the first movie, which was supposed to be direct to video and then they released it in theaters for some reason, had so that wasn't my happiest experience. The first 10 minutes or something are I like a lot, those, because those are what I wanted to do, be kind of spooky and stuff. So anyway, that's I guess I should have happier memories of that. I wrote it in Paris. How's that? That's happy.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, nice. That's good.
Yeah.
I love that
come on.
movie.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Oh, I'm glad you like it. You never know from the outside. You've seen these things much more than I have. You look at these things if you work on it. And I'm sure you have the same thing. I don't know if you ever look back at your show again, but I'm sure
Sometimes,
a lot of times that's good. But sometimes you end up kicking yourself, or you kind of go, and you've kind of, it's sort of,
Yeah.
you're out there. And you guys get another chance. You're going to do it next week, but a lot of times with animation, it's too late.
Yeah.
So with live action, that's the nice thing about puppets is there's 3 cameras. You can cut around. You can run out there on the floor and figure something out in the moment. But animation, once the storyboard's done, it's pretty much, you can loop lines maybe, but you really are stuck with that and the timing that the director does. So for me, it was sometimes kind of hard to look at those things. So I'm glad you liked it. Now I
Yeah.
feel good about myself again.
Yeah, and with this podcast, yeah, there are some moments where we look back and think, this could have been done a little bit better. But at the same time, we also think, it's much different now. It's
Oh
not,
yeah.
it's not exactly the same as it was back then. So we know that we've definitely improved since, yesteryear when, there are some things that,
When you were children, when you were when
Well,
you were even younger. I don't know if you could be
Uh,
any younger, but you were at some
sure.
point younger.
yeah, well, let's see. When this podcast first started, I was 20, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You look younger than that. You've got a nice, young, healthy look. You must.
I've heard that before. Thank you very much.
and for me,
You bathe in oxygen or something. Is that how you guys do it?
and for me,
I missed
and for
that
me,
trick.
and for me, I was 17 when this started. Of course, I'm now 19. So
Oh my God, you're old. 19.
We're all kids at heart.
Well, and for
Yes,
me,
you do.
I started a little bit later, about 6 months after the show began. I was 22 when this first began, and I'm now 24.
You can beat them up. You're older than them. You can,
I know.
bully these guys with your
No.
wisdom.
Only for Chris and I, only by like 6 months. So
Yeah.
Oh,
he doesn't
okay.
have
Well,
that
still,
much.
still, if you've had a brother or something, that's 6 months to the cousin. That's
No.
But yeah, going back to kind of like with first things that we think but it should have been like that, but at the same time it is what it is. It's kind of what the business goes. They just
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
don't really.
Well, that's great. I think that's a healthy attitude to have. It's
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
and I think people appreciate that you guys are real. You're right there and you're doing it. And I think
Exactly.
there's a difference between doing the little animated thing where it's like people believe it's real, but it has no reality to it. It's all manufactured. I think the genuineness of what you guys are doing comes through, and I think that matters more than whether you say the words right or ask the right question.
For sure. Yes.
For sure.
Very,
Thanks a lot.
very well put.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, thanks again for that, Ken. So now, since you kind of mentioned a little bit, SNL, and of course, you're also a writer for that. How, do you kind of have any favorite sketches you got to wrote?
And I didn't get that many sketches on, and the ones I did, well, I things I liked were kind of odd little things, and you wouldn't know that there weren't character. I did work on Jimmy did the Barry Gibb talk show, and that was a recurring sketch that showed up. But for the most part, it would be like I did a monologue that people liked with Billy Bob Thornton, with everybody kind of imitating the voice from Sling Blade. I don't know if you guys remember Sling Blade, but people used to imitate
heard
that.
of it. Never.
Yeah.
Heard of
It's a pretty good show. It was his first thing, and it sort of established him as a writer director. And the sketch I did was kind of mean, but had a mean punchline. But that's how it worked over there, was doing mean things. And so that was more the thing. People now come up to me and say, just last week, somebody said, "Did you get hit by a baseball in the show by Derek Jeter?" And it's like, that's the sort of thing that other people remember. I don't think anybody would remember any of my little ad parodies or things I did. I did one that was so funny. It was the night before. Well, we realized it was about the some pill they had back then to overcome Alzheimer's or to help mom remember. And the joke was sort of like, they gave the pill to mom, and mom is like, do not resuscitate. I didn't sign this. And all the things they'd done behind her back when they thought she wasn't cognizant. And then Steve came to me, Steve Higgins, who was the head writer then and the producer, and now he's on. If you watch the Tonight Show, he's Higgins, and it was Higgins' Voice and Groover was the first show I came and worked on. But anyway, Higgins came to me and said, "Tomorrow's Mother's Day. we can't run it." But then we did, and we had a Happy Mother's Day at the end. But it was like it's that sort of disaster that you remember more than the things that you know, somebody said once that the sketches it shows like Kleenex. You do it every week, write it and forget it, and even as few things as I got on, I don't have a good memory of that. It's sort of a war zone. You're sleep deprived, and I wasn't necessarily good on that show, so it wasn't a good fit.
So how did you get the job writing and head writing for Arthur?
Arthur, again, it was sort of like Mark Brown had not seen any kids' TV, and he was involved in the development over there. And so he looked around. He liked Doug, and so he called over. He or somebody at WGH called over to Jumbo Pictures and said, "Who's the head writer?" And so they flew me up there, interviewed, and it was. I think they said, "What's your favorite animation?" And I said, like Simpsons, which they didn't want to hear. I think Carol didn't necessarily like Carol Greenwald, the executive producer, didn't necessarily like me in the beginning, but Mark liked me, and that's when he asked me about my childhood. And I said, when we were in the cinder block house, and we had we kids wanted a pool table, and there wasn't room for a dinner table and a pool table in the house. My parents got rid of the dinner table and gave us a pool table, and we ate out dinner every night. And for some reason, that clicked with Mark, having a kind of supportive parents and stuff clicked with him. So yeah, I think he was actually really a guy who kind of got me on. I know later Cinar had issues. They wanted to just do a show like they did. And it's always, a lot of times you come onto these things, it's pushing people outside their comfort zone to doing something different and trying new things. And, you see the effect of this now in movies. Everybody's trying to do the same thing over and over. And it's such a relief when something new and different, unexpected comes on, and that's was partly part of the thing doing there. And I had so many things I'd wanted to do on Doug and didn't get around to, or didn't have time to, or didn't have the thing. I'd never seen an animated character talk to camera. And I felt like, Arthur was another one of those characters who's sort of a Dickens character. He's like a clear glass of water, and everybody around him is crazy, big Fagin, Micawber kind of people. And he's like those characters who can get lost. They don't have a lot of comedy. So I thought, well, give him a monologue in the beginning and talk to the kids, at the audience. And there's always that thing on the shows that I do. It's like, why are you animating it? It's like a sitcom. They're just standing around talking. And so it seemed like, oh, that could answer that too. You could, what's it like to have a roller coaster in your room? What if your sister's a mule? Which is a funny story. Joe Fallon wrote that. And he said, what's my sister's a mule? And the kids don't know what a mule is. Change it to donkey. So pissed off Joe that for a couple of weeks, every show had a mule in it someplace. People wore shoes, they were mules. You had to mule things from place to place. It was a verb. It was every sort of figure of speech that was his revenge. One of his many revenges he took during the show. So anyway, that to me was something that I kind of had to fight for. And I remember Cinar being all like, well, that'll require a submain. I don't even know what a submain is. 30 years later, I don't know what the hell they were talking about, but somehow they came through, and the animation was great. The director was great. Greg Bailey was great. They did super fun things. I did a parody of South Park where apparently one of the animators stayed up all night and did it with
Oh
actual
yeah,
felt.
I remember that episode. Yes.
He cut those things out of felt and did it like that.
I probably do too.
It was meta. It was a real contest where they said the kids send in your show ideas, and the winner will get their show on the air.
That's right. And I think wasn't there a part like in the end of that episode where they talked about like the winners or whatever? Yes.
Yeah.
I remember
so what
that.
happened was the kids sent in things, and WGBH picked out a bunch of stories that could seem very much like stories we would do. And Joe was the one, and aren't there crazy ones? Let's just do some crazy ones. And so all the people who did good work, fortunately, didn't win the contest. It was the people who said a guy gets in the ring and Binky fights with United Press International. I don't know what that meant, but we did it. And then the main story was one girl wrote in to say they should do a show about doing a show. which is very meta, but the kind of thing we did. And so in the end, and then I remember it was meta. The kids actually on the show came up with those ideas that the kids had sent in, and those were their ideas. Time passed. It was like they were suddenly all adults by the time the contest was over. And the actual girl who won, they just abused the hell out of her. Who's this girl who won? Whose idea was this? So the main joke was that poor girl who came up with the idea that they should do a show about doing shows. All our characters ragged on her. How dare she? How dare she do that? So it was kind of beating up on the audience and doing something I always wanted to do on Arthur. I always wanted like letters, them reading letters and seeing behind the scenes, and Mr. Dink would take his teeth out and talk normally, fake teeth, and you'd see what it was really like. And so I think that ending, we had a little bit of an ending like that, where everybody sort of was standing behind the sets of the show. And so that was a fun one, and yeah, that had that animation bit. So sorry, that's a long tangent.
No, it's okay. On the subject of the really fun episodes, one of my favorites that you and Joe got to write was Arthur's Almost Live Not Real Music Festival.
That's
The one
right.
with all the music videos.
Yeah,
Like Library Card and Jekyll and Hyde. Yeah, I love that episode. That's probably my favorite.
Yes, that was so great.
That's one of those shows from you who don't have any ideas left, any story ideas. I think it was my last show.
Okay, let's have all the songs.
How about, I think it was Joe said, yeah, let's just have him do a music video. And so yeah, he wrote the Library Card one, and I wrote the Jekyll and Hyde one. And I think we filled it out with a couple more. And so those are the ones people always remember. He also wrote Crazy Bus.
Classic. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And
he wrote it and sang it.
He did sing it. Oh, that's good. Did you know that?
Yes, he did.
Boy, you are going to win on some Jeopardy that nobody watches. It's so obscure. Congratulations.
I mean, Arthur is such a wonderful. That's fine. Arthur's such a wonderful show. Like, oh my goodness! After it was aired for like 25 years. But with new episodes wise, like 25 years. Of course, Arthur, would still be going, airing. But of course, great people who work on that show, creative side, with writing side of things, Mark Brown and Peter Hirsch, such great guys, and they're both of them and Mark's son, Tom Brown, and three of them, they're right now doing their show together for Max, which is Hop, which I love that show.
It's that's so great.
Yeah,
that's great. That. Yeah, Peter had been a friend of a writer who had been on Doug Met Steinglass, and at the time he was first working as a security guard, but then later was in Greece. He had family in Greece, so he would send this is again pre-internet or anything, pre-email. He would send his scripts on floppy disks from Greece, which you'd always pray for the mails. And then, of course, it's like we're always behind and then wait for that floppy disk to come in with his thing. So he had quite the way of writing back in the day. I love Peter, such a sweet guy. And again, I had gotten, this is again deep in the weeds, but we had no email even then, with fax. And then the AOL started to email, and I got WGBH to get an account. It was called A Biggie was a thing. You had to pay back in the days to send email. And and what would happen is you could only one person could be signed on. And so people would go on there, the writers would go on there to submit their script, and they just sit there in chat rooms or whatever they were doing, and the other writers couldn't get their stuff on because we only had that one email address and so that you could send from or get from. So it was the days of floppy disk and faxing and living on the beach in Greece. So it's hard to imagine a better life than that. Right north there.
Yeah, absolutely. So of course, you also got to write several episodes for another PBS series, which we love that show so much. Between the Lions.
Oh, that's great.
What was that like?
That was, I didn't do, it was another thing where people, the reason Joe and I both had wrote for the last season is they didn't, he hadn't had written before. And it was like, and again, like me on Doug, he hadn't had written before. So you got to co-do it. And I think they were nervous actually about Norm and Chris. And so I went over to Chris's house, and it was great. It was there was nothing I could do on it, but it was
Oh,
great
Chris
going
and
to.
Norman's. Oh, such wonderful.
They're wonderful.
They're
Yeah,
great guys who came from
and then
Sesame Street, of course, and
Yes.
yeah,
then went on
and
to
well,
create Lions.
Chris's. I would go over to Chris's dad's house. Chris lived in his. I don't know if you guys ever watched What's My Line with Bennett Cerf, who was his dad.
Yeah, I did. I have,
Yeah,
I should
they
say.
still rerun it. And you could just imagine going in that house and, with the tuxedos. They did the show in tuxedos, and then they
Yep.
went out first night at some Broadway show, and then they came home and had a nightcap. That's a word you don't hear anymore. Nightcap.
Yeah.
They sat around drinking and all these books around, and it was just like, wow, that was, the Chris really came from a really wonderful family and incredible. And he edited books too. I don't know if that and Beyond the Kids book stuff, but they were great. And it was just like, and Between the Lines itself is just like the perfect title. They're so punny, and I thought Joe Fallon again was. I sort of suggested him. I think he did a lot of work on the first couple of seasons, and he and Norm have that same old radio. They love Jack Benny. They love puns. They and all that Gawain's World and Cliffhanger and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, love those.
Those Chris and his dad, his dad wrote a book or collected a book of kids' jokes. When I was a kid, I had Bennett Cerf's book of jokes, and it was all like wordplay and stuff like that. So Chris comes by it very naturally, I think, from his dad, who's reputedly quite enjoyed telling jokes, let's say. So, and so those guys were great. I really did nothing on the show. I wrote right before I did SNL. I wrote 2 episodes, and out of that, I got an Emmy nomination and an Emmys, and I did basically nothing. So thank you, Chris and Norman, for that.
That's cool.
So that's yeah.
I'm curious. Do you remember what 2 episodes that you got to?
There was one with an astronaut, a female astronaut. Was it Sally Ride? Is she the one who died?
Might have been. Yeah, I think so.
I just
I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was Sally Ride. And then I did one, some sort of 3 bear. Big Bad Wolf. Something about blowing down the house.
Is it Out in Outer Space?
That's the one where Grandpa Lion is in.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and then Lionel and Leona was like reading like some like or something, and then Grandpa Lion is like says something about space and all, and then for no reason, for so many times, even just in one episode, Leona and Lionel just said, "And outer space." So like they've just been saying that catchphrase.
Sounds brilliant. Your description.
It sounded good. Like it sounded good.
Yeah, I mean, Between the Lines is such a great show to kind of have children, to learn more about reading. I think that was such a great way to, kids to learn from reading from that show. That's how amazing that show really was.
And I think it was, sorry to interrupt, but I think, you're totally right. And I think it was one of the few shows, I think Congress gave it money because it was one of the shows that was proven and shown to actually help kids do things. So hats off to those 2 guys.
Yeah,
because they had it figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, originally the show was going to be only lasted for 3 seasons, but then of course the funding grants was all that came through. The show was first from New York, but the rest of the show to last season, which is season 10, they moved to Mississippi. To keep the show going.
They needed it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yep. Couldn't find the episode. Couldn't find the exact episodes, but we'll go with it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's all just give Norm credit. Has he been on this?
Who, Norman? Yes. Yeah, Norman and Chris have been on several times.
Oh, okay.
They're just the best. I mean, I don't know if the show would be like what it is if that's
they created it.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, definitely. That was totally their thing, and just their funny sense of humor and wordplay and stuff, which is perfect for kids. Just really. It's also, it's like when you're learning a language, which kids are, they just showed up on this planet. And so have you ever noticed this is way in the weeds, but like novelists who English is their second language are just full of puns and wordplay because the language is new to them. Nabokov and people like that. I think it's the vocabulary is really rich, and I think using those puns and wordplay, kids love them, and adults kind of cringe and stuff. But I think that stuff is just, again, because you're learning the language, and it's crazy that one word means two things. I think that's just somehow delightful to kids,
Oh yeah.
and absurd things. And so they had both of those things. They had both the absurdity and also the joy of language, which is really, that was such a fun show. My experience of it was about 2 days. So and joking on the phone with Nora. That's all.
That's great.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of their puppeteers on our show as well, from Between the Lines, Jen and Peter and Anthony
Pam,
Asbury and Pam Marciero, all of which are just
Noel.
wonderful people.
They're just they're
all of them
amazing. Oh my
all of them
gosh,
are just wonderful.
Yeah,
I just absolutely love like how like Jen and Peter done, like we've been from having Clea and Theo, their connection, and then doing what's cooking segments and all those things. Like, oh my gosh,
A lot of stuff they almost didn't get away with.
yeah.
You'd be surprised at how much stuff they got away with, as Jen said previously.
Yeah,
that's fun. I love Jen.
Yeah, certainly.
I didn't meet any of those people till Sesame, but I love them. I know the older version. You guys know the young Jen when they were bouncing.
Right, Bradley, Brandon, Freeman Jr., Brandon Smith, Sebastian Ritchie.
Yeah, the new puppeteers on Sesame. Yeah,
a lot of great people.
Great friends of ours too.
It's a cool mix of old and new. Yeah, they're all fantastic. So speaking of PBS, another show you wrote for that was Curious George. Based on books, of course. What was that like?
That was a whole different ball of wax. That was Joe Fallon again. He developed it from the books, and there had been a movie, but I don't think there was much crossover. So he
the movie,
yeah.
In
fact, I think it had started as live action and became animation, or started, and they shot the whole thing, and then I don't know what happened. Something happened there. Somebody will know better about that. But anyway, Joe, and again, it was like when I was doing SNL. Joe did the first bunch of episodes, and I think I wrote actually one toward the beginning of that, but I was doing something else. But he really got that off the ground. He's again a guy who really likes physical comedy, and it's I think for kids it's great. It's nonverbal. It's all visual. It's all kind of silent comedy gags, and his feet are hands. What's not to like? He can go home by climbing up the front of his building. There's no rules, and he goes ook ook ack ack. It's like that's pure childhood comedy gold. So that show was fine. It was Universal was involved too, and they were more hands-on and more we had to jump through more hoops on that, which I think Joe got tired of hoops, and my wife got tired of hoops. I got tired of hoops, and handed it off to Peter again because he loves hoops. I don't know. No, but I think in the end it was a great show. But it is a show where you went through so many drafts that the final product was actually the first draft of a new story. So yeah, it wasn't. But the show is, the animation is gorgeous on that show.
For sure. Yes.
That and Pocoyo both had just gorgeous. They're two different schools of animation. One CG and one flat. But boy, that just. Somebody spent a lot of time, and I think those were Australian animators. You guys probably know better than I do, but those Universal animation down in Australia, just amazing job. So,
nice.
Yeah, and yeah, those those were kind of goofy. I don't have really strong memories of that. Going out to LA a lot to have meetings. Was what I remember mostly, and kicking around Universal, trying to figure out something to do between times. But yeah, that was was a big hit. As you probably know, around the world, this guy David Kleeman goes around and talks about what kids like, and that show turned out to be. He has a whole slide about how important kids' TV is. When they took it off the air in Australia, mothers apparently sent in pictures of their children crying because Curious George was off the air. So,
Wow.
it was a really, and all credit to Joe and to Universal and everybody for getting that off the air. I came in again as a hired gun, third season, and tried not to wreck it. And to do something different. I know here and there, I'm sure I did something kind of fun. But
Right.
I'd have to look up my scripts here.
Yes, wonderful show.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, of course, you also developed another PBS series, Martha Speaks. What
Yes.
kind of went into developing that?
That was, that was an interesting show. It got kind of, that was someone got bogged down by curriculum because we had to introduce 10 new words per episode. You'd see these other shows on, they'd only have to do one word. We'd have to have 10 words and say them 3 times and define
Well, yeah,
them.
because Martha, she's like a little bit fast, kind of compared to so much other shows that you've been part of. Martha, she's just kind of talk a little bit faster than usual.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's one thing we always did is I always liked those fast talk comedies from the 30s and 20s. And so our scripts were always very long. And in fact, if I do look back at the early ones, sometimes saying, "Oh, we shouldn't have." We did a Martha Speaks, Joe and I, where each 11-minute script was 25 pages long, about
Oh, wow.
about the length of The Simpsons, I think. So they just had to talk about that. Was the John Hamm one to get all the lines in. So the development of that was, it was again the book writer was around but hadn't done anything. Just says do what you want to do. She had some rules, but we would get calls from lawyers. No other dog could speak, but or animal could speak other than Martha. And these kind of strange rules. And I pointed out that she has a conversation in one of the books with a dog in a nearby cage. But it was like, oops. So that was fine. There were just those were the sort of rules we had to abide by. And then it was just having crazy fun. I think of the very first thing I wrote, I'm always like, let's jump the shark from the beginning so you don't feel like later you've jumped the shark. So it's like the first thing was her, I think somebody switching her soup for Polish soup, so she only spoke Polish. And so and so I had those dog nappers who were always trying to get her, and the dog napper pretended to be Polish, and that's not your dog, that's my dog. She only speaks Polish. So they switched the soup for Polish alphabet soup, and she spoke Polish. The kidnappers were going to get away with it too. So yes. I always liked doing crazy stuff like that. And also, the mom was the voice of the dog too, of Martha Speaks and the mom. There's a kind of Hispanic one. So at one point I just had to write an episode where the dog imitated the mom.
Oh, wow.
On the phone.
Oh, wow.
And I think I added a third turn too. It's a dog imitating the mom. And the person that said, "You sound like your dog. Cool. Can you imitate your dog?" So it was the dog imitating the mom, imitating the dog. So,
yeah.
I only entertained myself with that episode, but I had so much fun.
Of course, oh my gosh, Martha Speaks was another great show. So speaking of episodes, you might remember. I'm not completely sure, but recently I've got to watch an episode of that show after gosh knows how long since I last time watched it, like on actual PBS Kids channel. That I usually watch sometimes on We Kids or sometimes at MPT. I recently watched an episode which is called Here's Martha and Dogfight. Do you remember that?
Here's Martha. Oh, those were the 2 episodes, Dogfight and Here's Martha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Here's Martha was like kind of like where Martha was trying to have her own like talk show.
Oh,
It
okay.
didn't really work out. So she was like trying to be that, but the end of the story that she was just want to be a normal dog again. And then a dog fight one, it's like where other dogs was like trying to get the toy or something, and then Martha was just kind of like but other dog is getting that toy, but Martha doesn't.
Oh, that's
that type of story.
Yeah, which those stories mean so much to kids, but they turn out to mean that as adults too. Adults are like, hey, he has that. I want that. He won't share.
Yeah.
She won't talk to me.
Yeah.
She won't be friends. He's ignoring me. He jumped in line in front of me. I was here first. I thought of it first. It's all the same thing all through life.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. One off the show too.
Yes.
Yeah, for those of you who are a little bit confused, We the Kids is WETA in Washington, D.C., and MPT, Maryland Public Television, 2 of the local stations for PBS.
Yep. And my local station is the station that co-produced Martha Speaks, which is GBH.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine.
Yes. Absolutely.
So you had mentioned it a little bit earlier, but what was it like writing for Pocoyo?
Pocoyo was great. It was actually really not written. I'd get on the phone. I went over Spain a couple of times, but most of it was on the phone with Guillermo, and we just try to make each other laugh. And we come up with a story, and somebody from ITV was on the line, and a great animation guy named John. He did a Secret Agent Mouse show. Was an animation consultant, but they were quiet, and they just let us riff and come up with funny things that would happen on a birthday or whatever. And then he'd go off and draw a storyboard, which frequently had nothing to do with what we agreed to do. He'd have his own jokes, and they were great. Luckily, they were great. And so then we would write the treatment based on the storyboard that he drew. And I wish I had some of these storyboards around, because you couldn't tell what the hell they were. They were just like, I don't know if you've ever seen the architect Frank Gehry, some of his drawings of buildings. It's just like, that's a building? That looks like, something spilled on the paper. So he had these crazy storyboards, and then we would write a treatment. I would write a premise. I forget the exact order. I'd write a 1-page premise and get it to the writer, and they were so short they would expand it to 2 pages. So that was the process, and then kind of melding what sort of came back as the story. I forget if they did animatics or storyboards or some sort of primitive thing with poses, or if it came back just as the final animation. And then we wrote the dialogue to the story based on what we'd written before. But really, the dialogue was added afterwards to fit the picture. And so that was, but it was super fun. I mean, that was just a joy to get on the phone. I wish I'd tape recorded those things, because we just made each other laugh for hours. And that was, no other show was that kind of joy to work, because I didn't have to do any writing. I didn't have to think up things all by myself, and I think it was kind of nice to have a guy who just thought totally visually and just loved. And he has a animated piece out there about a mummy in a museum. Guillermo Garcia Carsi, Carsi. If you find that little bit of animation of a dog sneaking into a museum to get a bone, is so much fun.
Nice. So now moving on to Sesame Street, how did you end up getting the job as head writer for them?
Yeah, that was a strange thing. It was it's very circuitous. You sometimes go and Disney and I had been circling each other for years, specifically a woman named Paula Rosenthal, who was out here, and Nancy Cantor. And we never found anything we wanted to work on together. They had shows that they thought would be good, but it would require moving someplace. and I just got married, and, or Paula was always trying to hook me up with this celeb wants to do a kids show. And they never panned out because people lose interest in doing kids shows. I think sometimes they want to do them because they have kids, and then the kids age out of them and they're not that interested anymore. So we never worked together. Paula was about that, but she was constantly like trying. And maybe that's a good thing. She might have ended up hating me if we actually worked together. You know, it's like sometimes your biggest fans are the people who most want to work with you, who haven't had that experience yet. So she called me and said, "Okay, Wilson Stallings over at is looking for for pitches over at Sesame Street." And so I called Kay. Kay was like, "Oh, I think actually Brown Johnson is looking for somebody." And I didn't really know Brown had been around in the Nickelodeon Doug days, and she'd come over down to the studio on Crosby. You know, this was 25 years before this. And we'd only met like once in an elevator. And I think it's funny, after I'd known her a few years, I looked back and saw one of my date books. I'd gone in and pitched her something, or she pitched me Gullah Gullah or something back in the 90s, and neither of us remembered it. But so I went in and chatted with her and hit it off. And I don't know if she actually talked to anybody else. So that was that. And then suddenly thrown into, suddenly the HBO deal went through. And so they were able to continue making the show. I know at that point, they were at the bottom of the ratings, and PBS was worried, and they were way behind in money. And, you know, I mean, you can read about it in the press, particularly with the CEO was very straightforward about, you know, not having the money and not connecting with kids. A big thing about that show is, and the thing that I kind of generally like, I'd never done a show where they actually tested it with kids. You know, Nickelodeon tested the hell out of things after we were there, but not when we were there. So I'd never been tested, and I was a little wary of that. But I have to say, they really do. It's a show with something to give kids. It's really got some valuable stuff to give kids. And if the danger with all these shows is, particularly after a while, you're talking to yourself, you're making yourself laugh, and you're kind of talking past the audience. And that Brown wanted to make sure that wasn't happening, and so tested with 3-year-olds. I mean, that's who they need to reach, and what the kids that need their help, you know, and particularly kids who don't get cable and get it on broadcast and PBS, which it still continued on HBO, footed the bill for that, and for social outreach and things like that. If kids aren't watching it, what's the point, you know?
Right.
So that she was very, very adamant on trying to reach out to kids, test them, see what they did, what do they really enjoy. The one thing they really enjoyed was Mr. Noodle. Still, after all those years, they had the researchers called it the toy drop moment, when kids were doing stuff. They give them toys to distract them, see whether they like the show better or the toy better. And they said whenever Noodle came on, it was a toy drop moment. The kids just were glued to this big goofy guy. Somehow
Bill Irwin, Mr. Noodle. Oh my gosh,
he is so great. And I'm so glad they kept doing him. There's some pushback about, you know, it's time for it to have a new Noodles, but he just physically, you just cannot believe that guy, how much he can do with just an eyebrow. And just an amazing guy to work with, just a beautiful guy. I'd seen him doing theater at San Diego way back when. And then he also did I don't know if you guys have seen it, In Regard to Flight, his off-Broadway show. It's on PBS or it's on YouTube. You can see it. Just great physical. The walking down in the trunk, all the famous bits are in that. And that's if you get I think it's only 40 minutes long, but it's just pure slapstick. It's just, he's just amazing.
Nice.
I'm just here to tell you, point you other directions. Talk to that guy.
yeah.
Call Joe. Watch this old special.
That's great.
But yeah, so we did Sesame Street, and it was, again, it's sort of like, I mean, as soon as we got there, they had to redo the deal because they were going to cable, you know.
Right.
And so suddenly there were 6 weeks of redoing the deal, and then we had to do that. And then I was the other cartoon got picked up in December. If we given us a cookie. So it was an insane time, and we had to, I think we were shooting already, and then we did the Christmas special, Once Upon a Sesame Christmas, right?
Yeah.
May of that
Oh
year.
yes.
Love
So it was
that.
like this huge, very insane time. But sometimes that's fun. Sometimes it's fun to be running from one stage to the other and doing crazy stuff. And
Nice.
luckily, Amazon is on the West Coast, so they're 3 hours behind. And there's these things at the end of the week, weekends. So somehow it all got done.
Nice.
Awesome. So, I'm kind of curious. It's definitely understandable if it's a hard question, of course. But do you have any like favorite episodes so far they got to work for Sesame that kind of stick out?
The favorite. Yeah, I think actually on this show I probably do have favorites. On other shows, it's like what was easiest to write, and still came out. Sometimes sometimes the favorite shows, just the one where Doug got handcuffed to Patty. I wrote in a weekend. It just came off like spool off a thread. Sometimes those are the shows. Hamburger Boy, that was just very easy to write those things because they just happened. They just came out of the typewriter. And so some of my favorites are probably not going to be anybody else's favorites, but I thought it was super fun. I wanted to do a Halloween story, but our schedules never did. But it was a sort of a Halloween, sort of monkey's paw, where everybody gets their wish sort of story. I wanted to do that. And we did that as the wish pickle thing. And I just like crazy things like that, where they switch bodies, and Bert gets stuck in the TV, and it turns out to be Shark Week. So that's I like that kind of playing around with the characters and getting them out of the comfort zone, and not always doing things the way they have been done. So and I think we tried to move it around, get it, because the problem with puppetry is it can just be rugs, pieces of felt talking to each other if they're not. I always like a show where you can turn off the sound and still follow the story. And so part of the effort was to kind of move from place to place and have some challenges and find things. And Elmo doesn't want to take a bath, so he's running from here to here, and he's getting dirtier and dirtier, and stuff like that. I wish if I had a list in front of me, I'm sure I could list off the ones. But I like the specials because you had more time to kind of dig into the thing, particularly the Christmas one and the Looney Pickle one, and also the one in the balloons. So those were all kind of top of mind for me. And whatever we did last season, which you'll see in a year, anything where there's kind of elaborate set where they turn this street into a game show or something like that, people tend to remember. Or
yeah.
Like that.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. It has some G Young and oh gosh, Cookie Monster. And
I think there was one recently with like I think Baby Bear was in it too, where they did like a game show kind of thing.
Yeah. I think that's the one you're talking about. I love that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I loved doing. I noticed before I came on, they did a lot with Guy Smiley. And I'm like, why are they always doing game shows? And then I realized, oh God, game shows are great because there's a ticking clock that isn't about anything like we have to manufacture. The world's going to blow up. It's just the game. And by the end, and a lot. I did a cooking show with Michael Che came in and did it where Cookie Monster was
right.
Stuff, and it was going crazy.
I love that.
I like that one too. Yeah. So it was kind of fun to do those ones where, and I got it. Oh, it's a good way to get info. And I do these little interstitials to their games, where it's a good way of getting information across and have a ticking clock and have some jokes hopefully in the middle of that.
Yes.
So, I'm looking down the list here of 52, just a random one. I like when they went out in nature that year because of COVID. They had to do a bunch of stuff outside, and the puppets.
That's right.
Great outside.
I remember that one.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing due to the pandemic they had to kind of shift from the actual set and do more like on location shoots.
Yeah,
we hadn't seen that in quite a while, so that was really cool.
They went to a farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes,
They did do
yeah,
that. Yes.
One where they went to
horse,
find a waterfall.
horse, yeah.
Oh yeah, the waterfall. Yeah, that hike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where the little brother's always like, "Can we go home now?" That's
Yeah, can we go home
my
now?
memory of life. Yeah.
So, you were also head writer on the animated segment, Abby's Amazing Adventures. Can you talk a little
Yes.
bit about that?
Love that
Liz
one.
Kaishan came up with the concept of that, and it was and the idea that things would come out of a basket, and it was something that was developed by a different group. Kay Wilson Stallings and Liz developed it, and then it sort of came onto the show as a jobs segment. They were kind of deciding between whether doing a live action segment there, like the foodie truck, or whether we should do an animated one. And so in the end, we did the animated one, and that was animated in house. So that was kind of interesting because we would deal with Justin and the rest of the people in the animation team, and that was an interesting show to do. Not much. The fun I had that was sometimes the writers would come up with funny things. Like one of the jobs was being a writer, so they would go around, fly out the room, and then come back right where they were, because being a writer is just sitting there with a pencil and doing stuff. And one of our curriculum people, Autumn Zitani, who she and I basically worked together every day, wrote a good one where they were in space and running out of electricity. There was like high stakes.
I mean, some of them that I remember that my head right now is the one where they like building. Okay, first of all, oh my gosh, Leslie and Frankie, oh my gosh,
They're wonderful.
they're oh my gosh, Abby and Rudy, and they're for what they're bringing to Abby and Rudy, it's just they're just great. I want to pull.
Yeah, they
guys
did an amazing audition, just improvising with her.
Yeah,
Frankie, if he has it. Have you seen it?
Abby's brother, or
I don't think I've seen that in particular, but
yeah, I thought that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But like, no worries. I like the where they're building things, and then the one that they're trying to build like a ride or something.
Yeah,
no,
I think that's what's the one.
It was either
yeah, I think
ride
a
or
roller
slide.
coaster. They built a roller coaster. They built a house with helping floating hands.
Right.
And they also made pies with floating hands. So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, on one time where they did like a play.
Oh yeah, that's a good one too.
That's interesting. Yeah, I vaguely remember that, and I remember them doing a rock and roll one.
Mm-hmm.
They did a few presentational kind of ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are great.
I love that stuff. And I'm glad Sesame wants to kind of have enough time to kind of have that segment kind of like that. So I think it was great, and I hope that segment will keep on
having those little segments.
Beyond,
yeah,
we hope.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Season 56 is going to be very different.
Yeah, that's what I did see that. Yeah,
that's what we heard about.
Yeah, that's what we heard too.
But we'll see what happens from there.
Yep.
Yeah, and those segments still live on, on the internet. I think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they're also on YouTube and stuff
show
like that.
on YouTube. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's how kids see it now.
Oh yeah, the YouTube channel's huge. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So any segment you like, and they'll still be writing segments.
Right.
And there's like if people who remember a lot of with the original Sesame Street, of course 3 of us we kind of do that. There is even like a Sesame Street. There's like a YouTube channel just focused on those type of eras.
Oh yeah,
Sesame Street Classics.
Called Sesame Street Fan or something like that.
Oh yeah, Sesame Street Fan. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was thinking of the package that the HBO Max had, where they had like something like 200 episodes from the past or something. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least they used to have it, but now they don't anymore. Season 56 is it's gonna be interesting where this goes.
Yeah, and where it goes, I don't know where it's going to land. It won't be on HBO, but that's a question for 55 is still to go. So
Yes.
that's something that'll be answered after July. I think 55 will run until July of 25.
Yeah, July. Yeah, July 25 sounds about right.
So
Nice.
you guys are going to be twice your age then. So don't have to worry about it.
I hope not. So I'm curious, who are some of your favorite celebrity guests to write for Sesame so far?
Oh, that's a good question. I mostly handed off the celebrity things to other people, and the people, they're all great. They come there, they're all, I have to say the same thing on SNL. They are out of their element. If you had, somebody come on SNL, they were always on their best behavior because that's not what they do. And they're going to go out live and it's scary. And they're deciding everything on Wednesday and they're doing it on Saturday. The same thing here. They come in the morning. They've read the script maybe. And so they're, just sweethearts. They love going onto that set is a big deal for people. They, they're all younger than me, so they all watched it. I didn't have a TV when I was a kid, so I didn't see anything. But so it's sort of magical, and they just, transported to be there. So and they know it's for a good cause, and so there's very little bad behavior. So that would be the kind of thing that would wreck it for me. Always try to write to their strengths and what they've done. And some people, Jimmy Fallon came on, who and he was, we knew each other from back in the day. It was fun to see him on the talk show. And then, just some of the comedians come on and they can make stuff better than what you wrote. It's the Michael Che thing was originally written for Guy Smiley. To kind of, and you can imagine a lot of that verbiage being kind of Guy Smiley, and it had a whole different take when he said those lines because we didn't have time to rewrite the dialogue, get it approved. But he gave it his own twist. It's Kate McKinnon. All these kind of improv people are sometimes the best at kind of taking something that could be, and the hardest are the people who aren't actors, who are stuck to the prompter. And with at least one of them, the editor, because you can do this these days, was so stuck to prompter, he moved her eyeballs. So in the final sketch, she's looking at camera and looking at the people with her, but couldn't in the moment do that. So to me, the most fun are the comedians and the people who come in to have fun. Questlove was a lot of fun. I wrote a sketch with Chance the Rapper, who came on and was a good sport. It was something where they were going to do a play about a monster who ate cookies, and it's him and Cookie Monster, and the guy who's cast as the monsters, of course, not Cookie Monster, it's Chance the Rapper. But people like that who could come on and just be a good sport and roll with it and be live and kind of give some of that kid energy to stuff. Those were all great.
Nice. So you were also head writer and executive producer on some Sesame Street specials, including Magical Wand Chase and one that you briefly mentioned earlier, When You Wish Upon a Pickle. What were those like?
Those were great. Those were not much different than writing for the show, except you had a little more time. And of course, the structure over an hour-long thing is different. You have to either interweave stories or have some sort of higher stakes. The Christmas one was also another one where I think that one was nice to see the street different. And I kind of like the idea of having. I had to push for this one that it was Sesame Street was the meanest street in the world. And but thanks to the magic of one little monster who came here 100 years ago, he brought Christmas to Sesame Street. It was so mean Santa wouldn't stop there. So I like that kind of story that you could. The précis of it is very simple, and you can hear the narrator on the trailer for it. thanks to one little boy, this magical Christmas. I think that sort of thing sometimes feels really good, and it's a story we want to hear, and so on. So yeah, and that was pretty much the same. It was nice to have one director over 5 days, and we had really Matt directed the first one, Matt Vogel, who I think has been on your show.
Yep, he
Vogel.
has, yes.
Man,
And then
he's so.
And Ben
wonderful.
Lehman did the second one. He was the executive producer, and that one was another one that was outside, got us around, and that was just a joy. Those kids were fun, and racing around on the balloons, and Elmo almost falling off the balloon, and then and the third one was a guy named Jack. What's Jack's last name? He's my best friend in the world. He comes here and we drink a lot of beers because he's a English.
Jack Jameson.
Jack Jameson. And he's
Jack.
Jack is
Jack.
wonderful. You
Previous
should
guest.
talk to him. You know, he does.
We already
We did.
did.
Oh, you already did. Oh, so you love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack-
Everybody's in here but me.
He's just great.
Yeah, really
Really
fun
good.
guy, super fun guy, and great director, very laid back director, and is editing it in his head, you know, and he doesn't get tense or anything, and I think that he makes a great feeling on the set. I don't know if that's universally shared, but it was on the floor. I feel like he was a great guy. So yeah, just having a great director there and planning it out. He also directed the 50th anniversary shindig we did.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my
Such
god.
a
again, that
great
was-
special.
Yes.
So
Such
many
a
moving
wonderful
parts,
production.
you
Have
know,
all
on
those
the West
characters
Coast.
coming back, and some of the human cast,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and Carol's even was there.
Carol.
Oh my god.
yeah. No, that was
Such-
super fun. Yeah,
such a
and again, he became our favorite director because he was so laid back and a great atmosphere. So sorry, I'm interrupting, but yeah, that was Jack did a lot, and those are what I remember about those things. Is just working with the directors, and the 50th was a lot of like moving parts, and how do you get from here to there? Because we didn't have the host all the days, so we had to kind of make it look like he was there the whole time, you know, and find ways to connect it where he walks off screen and we run an old bit or do something like that. So
Nice.
yeah.
So speaking of celebrities, you also wrote for the Sesame Street spinoff, The Not Too Late Show with Elmo, also serving as co-executive producer. I gotta say, this was a very, very interesting concept.
And a very fun show all
Very
around too.
fun show too. Yeah.
Yeah, like Elmo. I mean, not surprising. Elmo, like a Sesame Street character, like
Yeah, no, I
like
can't say
Elmo
I'm
being
surprised either.
Not surprised that happened. That it was a really cool concept to do. You know?
Yeah, it was Ben Lehman and the head of children's over at HBO came up with the idea.
Nice.
And yeah, it was a fun show. It was nice to have another show where there's a sort of backstage element. It got a lot of curriculum in there, and so we weren't quite as goofy with the backstage as we would like to have been. But yeah, that was super fun, and that was nice to see Elmo, because Ryan's really quick, and see him do it on his feet, you know. And
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
He will deserved Emmy this past December.
yeah, it's about time. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So happy for him, and for him that
Oh,
we
yeah.
keep having almost legacy of Elmo alive. Especially after Kevin Clash
Yeah.
did with him after all these years.
Almost 30 years.
Wants got filling in Kevin's shoes. To and and I know he's oh my gosh, he's doing such an amazing job with Elmo.
Yeah.
And I know Kevin's really proud of what Wine.
Oh, yeah.
Because he even told us even during our chat with Kevin, which like I said, like anyone else in the Sesame Street wise, he is he's so great. Like he's just so he's now doing things for Frog Rock and Back to Rock and
Yeah.
hearing Uncle Charlie Man and other things for Henson and stuff. But he did really he really supported what Wine is doing with Elmo. So that goes to show that Ryan's great performer for we keep him going.
Yeah,
Elmo.
he's great, and he's
Uh,
a amazing puppeteer, a great mimic. He he writes some stuff for his own puppet characters. It's just an
right.
endless.
Yes, Dylan Gill.
Yeah,
Gale.
Dylan Gale, yeah. Dylan Gale Studios.
Yep.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, which he does with Mark Gale, who's another puppeteer.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
See,
wonderful.
you guys didn't need me. You should have just talked to each other. You know you know more than I do. I just talk about old radio shows with Ryan. He's another guy who likes old nostalgic stuff. He loves all those 70s game shows. He knows them all. And
Oh,
he can
nice.
quote cartoons from before he was born. So that's he and like Norm and like Joe Fallon, they're all kind of fans of stuff that's sort of nostalgic.
Nice.
Now another series, you wrote for and executive produced was If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. It's based
Yes.
on that selling book. Oh my gosh. I remember reading that book so much in elementary school. Still have those memories, even reading it itself. Now what's it kind of like getting to, working on that, especially, out of all the things you've done, you're working on a series based on
Such an iconic book.
Yeah.
So what's kind of like, what was the kind of like whole difference with that in a way, and what was your experience doing that?
Yeah, I mean that was the pilot was a lot of fun, and the book author, the writer, was so supportive, and then I did a Christmas special before the show got picked up, so I sort of knew they were going to pick it up. Then it was it's one of those things where I go into these things where it's book based. I want to not wreck it. The thing is, everybody has you've seen a movie based on a book, and it's like, the book was so much better. It's not the same. The one thing I try to do on things like that is make it seem like the same experience, however much you can. In the books, the animals never speak. It's all narrated. They don't have names. So part of it is kind of giving them speech, a way of talking, and setting them off from each other. They did have genders. The cat was always a he, but also give them things. I forget if the cat was an inventor, but that seemed like something fun he could always be doing, and making the pig a bit of a pushy princess kind of fun character, and giving him voices, and the casting is really important in that kind of thing, to have give a voice to a character who's never really had one. I think I had the moose originally being kind of very fubsy and English, and I think it was Tara Sorensen who was like, "There's no mooses in England," so he became a Canadian moose. So that's a lot of the challenge in the beginning is laying that groundwork, and the same thing like I was saying with Arthur. It's like the format. How do you tell a story? And that the format became very. They really wanted to have it almost like in the beginning. They were kind of talking about a choose your own adventure kind of thing, where you could every time there was a choice, you could go off in a different direction. But they wanted to make very much choice based, and so they had to talk a certain way whenever there was a choice. And the education people really wanted there to be two stories where there was a different choice at the beginning that went, and then came back to the same question. And you remember the books are very cyclical. He wants a cookie, wants a glass of milk. In the end, a glass of milk, it'll make him want a cookie. And then kids will say, "Oh, read it again." So they had this kind of cyclical structure. So it was really tricky trying to be true to that, and also the kind of educational thing that Amazon wanted, which was kind of emphasizing the making of choices. So that was technically really hard. That's what I remember most about that show, is the technical difficulty of highlighting these choices in a way that was, and still tell a story, you know. The fun thing I remember doing is on the Christmas special, I had these idiots all say hi to each other when they showed up. And I just thought that made me laugh so much that in every show, they would all stand around and say hi to each other whenever somebody showed up. And if one person didn't say hi, they'd wait around, wouldn't be able to go on until the person said hi. And it was such a baby show kind of idea, but I just really dug that they were just dug into that. And then to get on the Sesame Street, and they're all like, if you don't write in somebody saying hi, somebody will be a little mad that he didn't say hi to somebody. So that really exists in some other places, but for me, it was just kind of a joke on giving us a cookie. Just make half the show is taken up with people saying hi to each other sometimes. So,
Nice.
and it's a fun little show. It's a little guy who's like kids feel. He's a little guy in the world, but he's not going to let that hold him down. The big guy is a big nervous guy, and he leads the marching band into the store. He's not going to let things stop him. So I think that's he pulls his kid into adventures.
Nice.
The kid becomes the parent to the mouse. The kid, who has to kind of control your mouse, and so I think that all that structure to me was kind of, if it wasn't there in the books, it was latent in the books, and so sort of just bringing all that to life is the challenge of any of these book things, is making them seem like, oh, that's the same experience I had. That's what I loved about the book. I try to be invisible. So that's my main job in life.
Nice.
Interesting.
Except on this show where I can't stop talking.
You're good, don't worry.
This, right? I'm getting paid.
So, as we're getting close to wrapping up here, could you share any projects you're currently working on now? We said you are allowed
I'm
to
working
talk
on
about.
nothing. I've got one development
Okay, cool.
that's going to go through the next year, but I've done this for 35 years. I've been waiting for the phone to ring and always been a hired gun. I'm going to try to do some of my own things for a change, which will never happen. You'll never hear those, but it'll entertain me. In my head, there's such great shows going on. So I'll try to get a few of them down on the paper. And I do have this one project that's going to maybe come to light in about a year. But really, I'm enjoying not doing anything. It's been so many thing to thing. It's nice to actually. Of course, my wife has me going up on the roof and taking down antennas. It's a sitcom here. It's the old Lucy show. So,
Right.
I don't have
Nice.
time to read.
But yeah, looking forward to the next project that's eventually next year.
Yeah, exactly. It's not next year.
Yeah.
or around there, or something like that.
Around never. Sometime around never.
Or whenever it will be.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. So to wrap this up, so this podcast is called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. When you think of nostalgia, what do you think of, or how would you define the word nostalgia?
For me, nostalgia was a word that meant so much back when I was a kid, but it meant the way the 60s was sort of the 20s all over again. So for me, nostalgia was what they called nostalgia was granny glasses, long dresses, Tiffany lamps, stuff from around the birth of the 20s. So nostalgia's always had that sort of a certain era feeling for me. And then as you've gotten older, I think a lot of people think of it as old TV shows. For me, I got nostalgic about things in life, and I think the experiences you remember. In a certain way, I'm nostalgic for my own life for the days when we were doing Arthur and Doug and all those things. But then I remember how hard it was, and I'm glad I'm here. The nostalgia is sort of that Vaseline covered lens that you look back on certain things with, and some things definitely hold up that have nostalgic value. But I think the value of them isn't just pure nostalgia; it's that they were actually great. You guys talk about the old Sesame Street shows, and a lot of those things just really continue to exist, not just for nostalgic reasons, but because they delivered a punch or a good feeling, or a kind of world you wanted to live in, and kind of people you wanted to be around.
Nice. Great words. Nice. Great words to end on. Well, Ken, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was a blast.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's a great show. Super fun.
Thank
Now
you.
I have to go back and see what other people said. I
Sure.
couldn't watch before. I couldn't
Sure.
watch. I didn't.
Oh, it's all right.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a great show. Super
No,
fun. And
thank
you guys
you.
are also young to be caring about this old stuff. It's nice.
Well, I mean,
It means a lot for you saying that. Yeah, thank you so much for being on, and thank you so much, for what you're doing throughout your careers and everything. That we glad we got to touch base on what you love doing, and keep up great work of what you're doing now, and cannot wait what's next in store.
Okay, great. You need it.
Yeah, sorry. Keep in touch. I'll let you know when this goes up. Bye, Ken.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, okay.
you.
Bye. Nice meeting
Bye.
you.
Nice meeting you as well. Yes, and it's goodbye from us as well. We absolutely enjoyed our time speaking with the wonderful Ken Scarborough. Keep on the lookout for more wonderful interviews coming your way. And as always, what do we say, Jake?
Keep nostalgia alive. Take care, everyone. See you next time. Take care. Bye.
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 Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode. Be sure to follow Jake and the Happy Nostalgia team on social media, check out our website, and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.